the component of motivation and the component of ease of adoption. If you can tackle both of them at once, it's fantastic. You're the king of the world. If you can build adoption, you can build a massive business. But we decided to take a holistic approach of how can we really reach both, but also find the low-hanging fruits where there is a lot of users. Frankly, I haven't seen a single identity solution out there that actually can create that journey. The whole concept of magic started with the idea that it has to be simple like magic. We should breeze through our lives and things happen. Doors open for us.
Welcome to the Peak IDV Executive Series video podcast, where I speak with executives, leaders, founders, and change makers in the digital identity space. I'm your host, Steve Krig, founder and chief enablement officer of Peak IDV. For our audience, this is a video first series, so if you're enjoying this audio version, please check out the video recording on executiveseries.peakidv.com, where you can watch the full episode, you can read the transcript, and you can access any of the resources or links that we might mention or discuss in today's conversation. In this week's episode, I'm pleased to speak with Thanasis Mandaltsis, founder and CEO of Magic ID. Magic ID is a proprietary ID platform that combines digital IDs and AI to help enterprises build personalized experiences for real customers and prospects. Thanasis started Magic ID in late 2022 and emerged from stealth last year. Prior to Magic ID, he was the Founding Trustee of Trust 3.0 and Product Innovation Lead at IOV 42. Thanasis got his start in identity at Onfido, where he spent over 4 years leading product innovation and go-to-market in Onfido's portable identity business. Welcome, Thanasis. Thank you for making the time to be on the podcast.
My pleasure, Steve. Thank you for having me. And I'm really excited to talk to you today. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
So let's catch up.
Good to see you. Well, let's get started. I'd love for you to share with the audience your Magic ID elevator pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Magic is we're developing an embedded identity platform that basically allows or helps referral aggregators, like think like Skyscanner, allows referral aggregators to convert more of their traffic on their partner's website. So we have a proprietary platform where basically aggregators can use it to federate or syndicate their users' IDs to their partners by reducing the conversion journey to literally as little as one tap, often including also the payment processing.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great background. What led you to start this business? Like, what put you on that path in particular? What's your story around that?
So it goes back as Onfido, to be honest. And well, we all know that onboarding, the account opening process is where the most friction occurs, and as a result, where the most amount of drop-offs happen. So it's a really big pain for companies. And because it's the end of your funnel, so you've already done all your marketing activities, you have a user who's ready to sign up, and then depending on the steps you add, the more users you lose. Sometimes even 50% of your funnel is lost at the account creation and the onboarding and the onboarding stage. So it's a massive number. And if you recall, while working on Onfido, we used to run 1 or 2 reports per year talking about friction, how to create friendly friction, how to incorporate a mix of upfront verification, later on verification to make the journey more smooth. So all of this for us individuals today, like how it works onboarding, especially when it comes to KYC and ID verification, is very intrusive. So there is a pain to the business, and then there is a pain for us where, first of all, we have to figure out where our document is, take a good photo, and so on. But most importantly, we need to take photos of our documents multiple times, and we need to give our documents to multiple companies. So back at Onfido, when we started doing portable ID, and that's how I got into it. Actually, the first person who sold this idea to me was not Hussein, it was the CEO, but it was Jacoby, so the engineer of the team, who's a surprisingly good salesman for an engineer. And what we're trying to do is basically create V2 of that vision. In a nutshell, we are thinking of a world where we don't ever have to register, verify, or fill in another form again. And where our digital IDs basically take care of all the little things, the little hustle in our daily lives, the admin. And over time, they learn as we use them. So you can think of it a bit like a digital twin, right? So you can picture this if you want. So your phone pings your message in a couple of years' time, and it says, Steve, remember to pack your bags because your cab is picking you up at 6:30 a.m. to take you to Heathrow Airport when you're going to be boarding a plane to Madrid. You arrive at 2 p.m. local time, and you head to kiosk 6 to pick up your enterprise rental car. From that point, you drive to Hilton Hotel, where you're going to check in a room 706 using your phone. This is what we're imagining the future looking like. And the two key questions that we're addressing is how can we make sure that this digital twin can robustly represent us online, because it will take care of transactions on our behalf. And it might book a flight, but it might also invest our savings, right? And the second question is, how can we be sure that it works for us and its purpose is to augment us and not to sell more Amazon products to us or more Google products to us? These are the two problems we're trying to address about this future.
And for the audience, Thanasis and I, we worked together at Onfido, and one of Onfido's public stated strategies was to move into portable identity. That was one of the pillars that it put out into the public domain. Thanasis, I'm curious if you in your career always wanted to be a founder, or if there was a point in the last few years where you decided, hey, I'm going to start my own company.
I come from an entrepreneurial family. So my dad actually, they own, my dad and my uncle, they own a business back in Greece, a manufacturing business, a small manufacturing business. So that was started by my grandpa. So I think that there was always some sort of direction from a family that it's taking risks is a good thing. Albeit I did grow up I remember I was 16 when the financial crisis hit, and then there was 15 really tough years for Greece, and still not recuperated fully. So I definitely had some stimuli from my family and my background. To be honest with you, if there was a time in 2019 where I was obsessed with portable ID at Onfido. So if Onfido hadn't stopped doing portable ID, there's a good chance I would still be there doing that. So it's more, I think it's a combination of having the stimuli, but also the necessity of this is not happening. I left Onfido to work for a decentralized identity company, and then I realized that this is also not a great solution for identity per se. You have to do tons of workarounds with decentralized identity to make it work and make it compliant and make it user-friendly. And that actually pushed me to try again. That's when I realized that, instead of working for someone else and trying to build something that I don't fully believe in, why don't I give it a go? I had some savings, so I was like, okay, it's a good time. I don't have kids. My partner and I had just bought a flat, so we're sort of safe in that way. So I thought to take a leap, and that's where Health got me here.
That's great. That's great. So in 2022, you'd started, you were in stealth. You came out of stealth in 2023, and then I see toward the end of the year, you did a pre-seed raise, 350,000 euros. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I started evaluating this again while I was still in my previous job. And actually, I almost ran out of money before we raised. So I had £2,000 in the bank when we raised this pre-seed funding round. So I was ready to quit. I almost quit that very month. No, well, didn't want to, but I had to find a way, right? And then we raised the funding round at the end of 2023 by some really good pre-seed VCs.
Can you share more about that experience of fundraising? I know 2023 was pretty tough to raise money. Things are starting to look up in 2024, but how was your experience getting that pre-seed?
That was painful, to be honest, very painful. Like it was very. So I first of all, let's start by explaining to everyone who listens that I did all the mistakes in the book, as you're supposed to do, right? We tried to go to VCs where we didn't have a product, and maybe that would have worked 2 years ago. But in 2023, it was all about traction. It was all about metrics. It was all about product. And it makes sense that obviously the financial landscape changed a lot. And when you can get 5% interest on your bank account, you think twice about putting your money in someone without a product, I think. I think that was the main mistake, right? So we went to VCs, went straight to VCs. We shouldn't have done that. We should have gone to angels to start off. But at the same time, I think the frustration I have with how this market operates, like the VC market, is that there is no incentive. And I understand why there isn't, but I think we should be doing better for the next generation of entrepreneurs, because there are people out there who are trying to solve some really important problems about the way the world works, involving the environment and others. And when you're looking at transformational technology, it's very tough to see traction in the first year or two. If you're going to see traction in the first year or two, and the traction that investors expect nowadays for anything aside from AI, then it's not going to be as transformational. Then it's going to be already somewhere out there. Somebody's working on it. So I think the main frustration I have with that experience is that nobody will ever tell you what you're doing wrong. Nobody has time to tell you that. And okay, I get it. We all live busy lives, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe it's the romantic part in me. I like the idea of helping each other, even if it's, it's tiny bit of advice that you get from every VC you talk to. Equally, when I talk to people who want to found a business, maybe I don't spend hours with them, but I'll spend half an hour. And if I spend half an hour, I'll give them some constructive feedback. That is something I found quite difficult when raising.
Getting the feedback after you've given a pitch where it just goes dark? Is that some of that experience?
Yeah, it's either you're ready or you're not. So if you're not, then that's it. You don't get the feedback. If you're ready, then people want to invest in you. But if you're not, you're not going to get much out of the conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot like just general sales in life. If you've got a compelling value proposition and there's interest, you continue the conversation. If not, you may not hear back, and you don't know, is it because they weren't interested, or they're busy? Is there something else that's come along? So it's definitely some good feedback on the experience. Now, speaking of sales, you mentioned Jacoby as being a really great salesperson, and you recently appointed Jacoby Thwaites as your CTO. Could you share how you got reconnected with Jacoby post Onfido? And Jacoby used to work at Onfido as well for the audience background there.
Yes, of course. So Jacoby and I never really disconnected, So we both live in London, and he was the reason I started getting involved in this whole portable ID concept. But Jacoby's idea, like the way that portable ID used to work at Onfido and the way that Magic works now, is very unique in the sense that it doesn't use decentralized ID, it doesn't use traditional blockchains. It actually intends to allow us to be real digital identities, like Google is, like Facebook.com. The internet is built on digital identities like them, right? Like a domain name system. And there is already a lot of good things that work with the internet, and we use it every day, and it's secure. But we resort in the idea of being numbers under the database of Google. The idea Jacoby had back in 2019 when we were building portable ID was that everyone should have a domain. And out of that, the choice of architecture and the choice of protocols, there's a bunch of exciting emerging properties, which we're applying and our clients really care about. And I can talk about it briefly later. But long story short, Jacoby and I never disconnected. I was always close to him since he instilled that vision to me. And we both care deeply about the problem of centralization of the web, the problem about a bunch of big companies owning everything, and the lock-in effect that has, right? And that is something that our solution, I believe, like the way of choosing protocols solves. And that's why we got back together. Thankfully, we had reached a point when we approached Jacoby again, where there's enough traction to also reignite that fire in him. And after a little bit of turbulence the last few months, thankfully, Jacoby was really supportive and managed to very smoothly take over the range of the technology. And we're now at a point where the product's working. It's no longer a prototype, and it's been integrated into two really large POCs, that B2B2C POCs in the US and Africa.
That's phenomenal.
Very pleased with that.
That's great. When we worked together on Onfido, we didn't have a lot of overlapping projects, and I don't think I ever got to ask you how you got into the identity space. Like, what was your journey to get to Onfido, and how did you first get introduced to digital identity?
Yeah, we didn't have actually. Yeah, and it was the time that Onfido was growing so fast. I think that so many people were joining around this time, and obviously you were in the US, I was in the UK, so it wasn't very easy to overlap. It's crazy times now that I remember, right? The growth was phenomenal at that time. There was this point in time that I think a lot of people, I definitely drank the Kool-Aid, but a lot of people thought we can change the world. And sadly, things took slightly different turn. But yeah, I'm diverging again. Like I was studying in Greece. I grew up in Greece. I was studying in Greece. And then in 2015, it was capital controls in Greece. So I needed to get out. I felt strangled. I felt like there's nothing there for me, no room to evolve, no room to do anything. So gladly, I was very fortunate to be able to do a master's in Amsterdam when I started the digital innovations master in 2015. And while I was there, I was working for a tech startup. I was doing an unpaid internship for a tech startup. It was basically like Airbnb for cars. There is a service here in the UK called Get Around, and in Europe, you rent your car to someone else. I don't know, is it Turo in the US?
Turo, yeah. Turo is the big one here in the US.
Yeah, so it was that concept, 2015. So nobody else was doing it, and there were real blockers. That's why not everybody else was doing it. But it was that concept, and the niche was airport travel. So if you live in Amsterdam and you want to take your family to a trip, you don't want to take the train. You take your car to Schiphol, and then you leave it there, and inbound travel takes your car and uses around the Netherlands. And we had just closed the small crowdfunding round, like 300,000 euros or something, and we wanted to expand to Rotterdam. And then we realized that the expenses of expanding to Rotterdam were really high, and the main reason was we need someone to hand in the keys and someone to check in the documents. So I went on exploring who can help us with that, and I ran into Onfido. And again, 2015, 2016, a startup doing AI to scan documents and faces. I was really impressed. It felt a bit like spy stuff, you know. So I thought, like, I need to work there. It's one of the handful of companies I applied after my master's. So 3 months later, I sent an application. It was a junior sales role. Sent an application, and 2 months after that, I landed in London, October 2017.
That's awesome. Well, going from being a customer to being an employee, like getting to see the technology firsthand. When you went into the sales role, did you always have an ambition to be in sales, or was that the role that was available? I'm curious about how you chose to get into the account executive position.
Yeah, it was coincidence, to be honest. I think it was a mix of wanting to speak English more, to be more fluent, because I wasn't fluent. I wasn't as fluent. I was okay, but I wasn't as fluent, not in professional context. And I thought this is probably the best place to go because you have to talk a lot. And then also, frankly, I didn't understand how other roles operated as well. So sales seems very straightforward. There were neither product managers available, to be honest, at that time. So it was like Onfido was not growing as fast. I think at that point we're hiring around 2 or 3 people a month, maybe. So it was steady growth, but the company still hadn't picked up. So it wasn't there's a plethora of roles I could choose from. But yeah, sales, I really like sales. That's the other thing. Like I really like the idea of talking to people and getting to understand what it is that they want and what is they're saying behind what they're saying. I think it's one of the most challenging things to do, and especially doing large enterprise sales. That is a whole different level of complexity. But the human element, I like that. I like the difficulty behind understanding humans and trying to explain and get them on your side without appear you're selling, right? Because that is where people get turned off. The best sale is a sale you don't really understand. It's a sale.
Really deeply understanding the problem that they're dealing with and helping to educate first on solutions before selling your solution, immediately jumping in.
You're right. Exactly.
You were in that role for a few years, but then you moved into product strategy, innovation. You got to work in portable identity. What were some of the key projects that you started working in particular around government? If I recall, you were doing some initial projects with sort of the public sector.
Yeah, so government came after portable ID, and it was a little bit of a compromise. I'll explain why, but the reason I moved actually is because the sales is amazing. I really like doing sales. I like doing sales much more than I used to, because now I sell my own product, my own company, and I have full control of how that deals. And that is very liberating. But that was my frustration. The only frustration with sales back then is that you actually don't have control over what you sell. You have to sell what you're given, and it's very rarely that you have direct influence to the product itself. And unless you're obviously like, the leader of sales, where you actually feedback and you really affect things. So I really wanted to be involved in the creation process. I wanted to see that from a few steps before. How do we get here where it's what you said? And how do we know that when we build something is what the customers want? So I really was looking to get into product for a couple of years before I managed to do it within Onfido. I didn't want to leave Onfido. That was the other limitation. I wanted to stay in Onfido. I had a really good time. I met some amazing people, some amazing leaders, friends, entrepreneurs. Like, it was a great environment. So I didn't want to go. And then I had 3 months off, where it started as a time off that I wanted to take, and then I realized I was sick. I had to be away for a few months, and I had so much time to read and introspect. And when I returned to work, I'm like ready to get my sleeves up, and coincidentally, I'm sat next to Hussein. It was like one of the first days I returned to the office. It was summer 2019. I remember that as yesterday. And I am so inspired about technology and about the things we can do to save the world. And I'm also come from a little bit of a sensitive point, because I did have a near-death experience. So I'm like, go to Hussein, and I'm like, we need to do something with our tech. We have so amazing tech. We need to help the world. I had just read a book about blockchain and voting. So I was like a little bit young and naive maybe, and thinking, like, how can we actually do something that matters? And I go to tell Hussein, and I love that reaction. I remember it's like, you should go talk to Jacoby. We're building portable ID. It's a side project. And we're going to take it to the FCA, to the sandbox, to validate if we can launch it. And like a couple of days later, I met Jacoby, and from that point on, I think I haven't chased anything as relentlessly as moving to that role. And I remember Jennifer. I don't know if you remember Jennifer Barrett. I was leading the sales in EMEA. It was a very tough sell to get out of sales, because I was doing well. I was actually hitting or exceeding targets consistently. And there wasn't a clear role, there wasn't a clear mandate. So I remember trying to get out of sales relentlessly, getting every lever I could move to go into that team. And then lastly, in the end, it was Hussein actually that pulled the trigger. So I had the best sponsor in the company, basically. Yeah. Great. It makes me smile. It was such a nice time.
That's great. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about your near-death experience. Are you able to share a little bit about what had happened around that?
Yeah, I can say happily. It's been a while now. I'm perfectly healthy. I mean, near-death experience. It ended up not being a near-death experience, but the moment it happened, it felt like it was. So I was traveling with my girlfriend, my partner Rebecca, in Latin America, and we were in the camper van, and we break down in the middle of the Bolivian desert. It's like we buy the camper from a surfer dude, and we check it. We run the MOT, we run the full test, and we're like, everything's fine. And then we drive like all the way from South to from Santiago all the way up to Bolivia. It's like 14 hours or something of driving, or maybe more. And then we cross to Bolivia, and the car breaks down. So we leave the car, And for the first time in like 2-3 weeks, we sleep in a hotel, like not cramped in a camper van. And then I realized there's something wrong with my ball. And long story short, I go to the doctor there after a traumatic non-English speaking doctor, and I don't speak Spanish. So I had to hear Rebecca speaking in Spanish and translate to me. I realized I have to remove my testicle because I had a tumor. And long story short, I almost removed it in Bolivia. Thankfully, I had a very good friend who told me, don't do that, who's a urologist. And 40 hours later, 5 flights, I was in Greece, and I did it there. So I had to do like a round of chemo and all this sort of things that you have to do. But retrospectively, it wasn't near death because it was okay. But when it happened, and also the aftermath of the trauma, it was quite traumatic with the chemotherapy and the fragility, not just the fragility of thinking, this happened to any one of us, my parents, our friends, anyone. It's very easy to happen. And that's when I returned and I felt that I need to spend my time with something I really care about and something I believe in. Oof, actually, that was quite intense.
Wow. Well, thank you, Thanasis, for sharing that very personal moment in your life. I can imagine you're supposed to be there on a vacation trip of a lifetime, and you get such disruptive news. So I am thrilled you're on the mend, and you came back from that trip sort of invigorated for solving new problems in the world. Your point about Onfido and just the ability to move around, and Hussein being able to pull the trigger for you to join on Portable Identity, that's incredible. Let's get into Magic ID now. We sort of went through the backstory on Onfido, and I really wanted to go into that to build the foundation of what you're doing next. You mentioned your pilot projects and the proof of concept. Can you share more about perhaps one of them and what you're doing exactly, and the region and the use case in more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I had to write this down to make sure I don't say anything that I'm not supposed to. But look, I can share the high level. So basically, we are focusing on referral aggregators. So the experience our technology creates is, if you're Skyscanner, I'm giving that example so you understand the use case. I cannot tell you which clients are, but I'll explain more about the problem. If you're Skyscanner, your users come to your website to find flights. So you type in your flight, departure, destination, dates. You're given a bunch of providers where you can book your flight with. When you click on that provider, it takes you to the site. Let's say it takes you to EasyJet or American Airlines. And there, when you arrive, if you have a profile, you might log in, but a lot of people don't have a profile, or they're not logged in any case. So they go about filling information, full name, payment details. Some airlines are already starting to prompt the users to provide passport details upfront. And there is a play there with identity as well. But with Magic, Skyscanner, partners of Skyscanner take 3 lines of code or a widget. And we have built already 3 widgets, but we're going to keep building more, like for, let's say, WordPress, Next.js, and so on. So it's a very easy integration. And every partner of Skyscanner that takes that can identify a Magic ID or a Skyscanner ID, if you want to call it like that. Because the idea is that we allow our partners, our customers, to federate their users' identities to their partners. And architecturally also that works in the way that we don't have access to this, the information that happens. It's not like sign up with Google. When your users sign up to EasyJet with their Skyscanner ID, we're not sneak peeking to see what's going on and copy your idea or figure out what services work and what not. It is possible, but the way that this is built is that every time that a connection like this happens, the consent lies with the user. So the user explicitly have to say whether they want to share, what they will be saying, and so on. So this is what our 2 pilots are about. They are aggregators. Specifically, they are about special groups of people. So like think students who want to access an offer, want to access an night in cinema, they want to access, book a travel, anything you can think of, but it's related to offers and aggregation plays. And this is where we see the most interest, because this process is painful, and our technology actually allows this to happen in one tap. Like the moment you land on EasyJet or American Airlines, there's no password, there's no email you need to fill, there's no phone number, there's nothing. You don't have to think about it as an end user. You just land there, and a box pops up and it tells you landed here through Skyscanner. You'll be sharing full name, passport details, payment processing details. Do you accept? And if you hit accept, the level of assurance is very flexible. It depends on the use case, but in theory, in practice, actually, how we recommend implementing it, especially if there's payment, when you hit accept, we take a selfie. It verifies, authenticates you versus your existing password and selfie. And if you're the same person, basically a workflow is triggered where does that selfie match that ID? Do they have a password? Do they have a payment card? Check, done.
So if I understand it correctly, is what you're providing infrastructure where any one of these companies are white labeling your solution, or does the user see login with magic? What's the end consumer experience like?
It's infrastructure. You're right. Yes, it's more on the infrastructure side, and it's we have built the first apps ourselves on top, so that we create proof of concepts and create some concept demos effectively. So we've created apps for ID verification, authorizations, authentications. We have built all that. All that is at the platform level already available. And then our customers white label it. And the experience is like when you land on Skyscanner, again, I'm giving that example, you don't have to log in with Skyscanner or log in with Magic, because we want to eliminate that competition against sign up with Google, sign up with Apple, sign up with Facebook. We don't want our clients to have to go through, put the buttons next to these buttons. So the moment you land on the EasyJet, as long as our code is part of the EasyJet website, EasyJet immediately identifies who you are, and it prompts you to share what you're supposed to be sharing.
For the components, especially like the face verification or the capture, are these licensed components or are these proprietary? How have you gone about putting all this together?
Great question. Our platform, so we offer the platform, and the platform is licensed, so our customers license the platform of us, and then they pay per ID per month. So per user per month, basically. But then there are add-ons on top of that. And we have taken the courage of integrating Onfido on top of the add-ons. We have a good relationship with them, a good commercial agreement as well. But it's very flexible in the sense that already one of the first two POCs we signed, they don't want Onfido, they use it somewhere else. So we're doing it with their provider. So you can think of it as like two structures, a platform, and then we have already got some partners, a platform and license, and then some partners that we have that we call them add-ons, which charge per check or per authorization. And then if you have your own, you can plug your own on top. There is some setup fee, so we can create this facility for you. Let's say you want to use Jumio, we create that facility for you for Jumio, and then you can use Jumio with your own contract. No strings attached with us.
Fascinating. You answered this question, I think, in your last response, but monetization is always a challenge in the space of reusable identity or portable identity. So if I heard you right, you have a charge for setup, and then you have a charge for identities under management. So the infrastructure for how many identities the platform is leveraging, is that right?
That's right, yeah. And bear in mind we are very early, so it's hard to say if that will remain exactly as it is. But it looks like it's an appealing model for our partners, and it also makes sense from the type of business we're trying to build. So we don't play with the transaction fee, because a lot of times what we anticipate is that when we start using this in the context of the POCs we're building, individuals will use that multiple times, maybe multiple times in a day even. So we don't want to charge per API. We want to find a way that it's license for, and basically the license what it covers is our platform does various things. And one thing is you can create distributed identity clusters. So Skyscanner has its own identity cluster, but at the same time, when it integrates 3 lines of code, it can identify Skyscanner users, but also Trip.com users. So when it does it once, then they can identify users from any cluster that they arrive. Yeah, it starts like that. You have identity clusters, decentralized distributed identity clusters that are, I call this distributed syndication. I don't know if there is a term, but it recently arises from a conversation. Like if you think about Google is a syndication of ID, and then you have Google here, and then you have blockchain here, and they're the two ends of the spectrum. And Google is big brother, blockchain is an idealistic future where we're very far from, and companies and actually they don't see so far. And it makes sense, right? So here we come in, we're closer to Google. We create distributed syndication models where Skyscanner has one and Amex has one and so on and so forth. And we eventually help them transition towards the future where this is more user-owned. It's already user-owned in our model, but eventually they will see the benefit. We believe that opening up to everyone, because it's consent-driven, opening up to the whole ecosystem will benefit everyone because you will be able to see much further than we can today. But this is a little bit further down the road. I think this is like, how do we actually build that future is what we're trying to do now. I'm sorry. So distributed identity clusters, account creation in one tap, including carrying identifiable data without usernames, without anything for the user to remember. And then we have enterprise-grade, time-bound authorizations. This is all on the platform level, and it's what you get with the license. And by time-bound authorizations, I mean that, put it very simply, you have your ID on your phone, and then you want to pass it to your computer. You control that, how you say it. And sometimes you might even have to take a selfie, depending on the use case. You pass the computer and you choose if you want to be one time or forever, until you delete it anyway. Or you want to enter a building. Let's say I invite you to my WeWork. Let's put that example, right? I invite you to my WeWork. I might pass you a one-time authorization to enter my WeWork. So you can come the day you visited me, but you cannot enter every time. So this is all part of the platform, and it comes with the license.
The spectrum you just illustrated, on one hand, big tech, on the other hand, the self-sovereign identity future that a lot of pundits want to see us move towards. In the middle, I'm seeing more and more this model of like centralized, decentralized, where it's still big platform, but they're using terms that look decentralized. When we look at Google, we look at Facebook, you even reference this on your website and in your LinkedIn, where it's similar to signing with Google. And those businesses are really there to drive ad revenue. And so it's very hard to trust when you sign into those ecosystems. Okay, how is this data going to be used? Is it going to be back to me as a ad targeting? What's your approach to privacy versus, say, a Meta or an Alphabet? Like, how have you thought about privacy by design?
That's a very good question. I like that question because it's super tough and there is no right answer. There are many wrong answers, but there's no right answer, I think. Because blockchain is also not the right answer. It's very problematic in many ways. And having done decentralized identity, you need to jump through so many hoops. Sometimes when something's so complex, it means you have to try a different way. But in principle, our ethos is we don't have access to your data. So your data is always encrypted. You can only decrypt it with your biometrics. And we also don't have access to the transactions of our customers by default. So when you use the Skyscanner ID to book an EasyJet flight, we will not by default be able to see that. And this is built on the platform level. So this is like hard-coded. There's nothing we can do unless there's a consent in place. Why would there be a consent? Frankly, right now, we don't see the reason to be a consent because we're here to allow Skyscanner to drive its business further and make its business better. So the consent should be between them and their users. And there are some ways very premature that we're thinking about how can this be built further using confidential computing, for example, like where there's data safe rooms where we can deduct some metrics and analytics without actually touching real data. But this is, being completely honest with you, these are all like part of the, we'd like to do that if we have the opportunity. We reach the point, but we're still in the go-to-market phase. So we have to be very pragmatic about what can we do today that makes sense. So by default, we don't see anything. Everything is consent-driven. And I'll take it a little bit technical now, though I'm not a technical person. So at the protocol level, the reason we're using DNS is because of the user controlling, the control it gives the user. DNS is literally, it's a decentralized system. Right? DNS is the most successful decentralized system that exists. And all the protocols around DNS ensure that when Skyscanner creates a distributed identity cluster, the first phase, it becomes the syndication of Skyscanner users. But it is possible to move away from that, literally turning a street, right? So it's not limiting in any way. If anything, it has the capacity in this scale of Google blockchain, it has the capacity to very easily navigate towards the centralized element. But it's more about how do we get there? It's more about how do we get companies to believe in that in a way that is not threatening to them, because blockchain is threatening to companies. It's something they don't understand. It's something they are worried about because they're going to lose control of their users. And what we see from early signs, early indicators and POCs and also other companies we talked to is that they don't really have a problem with that. If you explain it differently, it's about framing. It's about framing and taking them on the journey. So when we take on the journey, phase one, it's distributed syndication, but eventually, when everyone is ready, we'll move to more decentralized.
The thing about a Google and a Facebook is they brought scale first before they brought their identity federation. I like how you describe this Skyscanner use case, because the relying parties in this case are already bought into the ecosystem. So those identities are at the Skyscanner level. There's benefit immediately to all of those other downstream companies as well as the end user. At a bigger scale, beyond the individual enterprise, this cold start problem, I feel like, is held back reusable identity, portable identity, verifiable credentials, or whatever you may choose to call it. Where do you think the mass adoption use cases are going to lie? Certainly the travel use case is very interesting, but is that the one that's going to bring this to the masses?
Yeah, great question. I don't think I have a great answer, but I'll try. Again, I think I talked about this recently, actually, in a video we produced, but it's the component of motivation and the component of ease of adoption. And if you can tackle both of them at once, it's fantastic. You're the king of the world. If you can build adoption, you can build a massive business, but typically not easy to do both. So we decided to take a holistic approach of how can we really reach both, but also find the low-hanging fruits where there is a lot of usage. And bear in mind, when I say we decided, that has been a product of like 3 or 4 pivots and 2 major pivots. So we decided is a little bit of, we thought hard about it, but also we got smacked in the face too many times trying different things. Long story short, because of the ability to create this simple user journey, we realized there are use cases that have a burning problem with that, and they have a lot of traffic. Skyscanner is one of them, but a lot of aggregators have that traffic. And frankly, I haven't seen a single identity solution out there that actually can create that journey, that syndication model, simple enough. People like you and I don't really remember what they used. We don't remember if I used our Gmail or Yahoo, or I have 5 emails, and sometimes I use my mobile phone. That creates some friction, which contributes to drop-off. Obviously, yeah, it's not massive, it's just a phone number, but we try to make it as simple as possible. That's why Magic as well, like the whole concept of Magic started with the idea that it has to be simple like magic. We shouldn't breeze through our lives and things happen. Doors open for us. So we started there, and then of course, the security part of it, that when you remove passwords and usernames, and you remove a massive attack vector, which is phishing. So we realized that there is a use case that we can address that is quite large. And if you look up this market we're addressing, it's actually a very lucrative market, and there's a lot of usage there. And because of the fact that when you, as I said, Skyscanner integrates our 3 lines of code, can identify Skyscanner IDs, but I can also identify Trip.com IDs, you can identify Booking.com IDs, then that creates, hopefully, again, right, we have to make assumptions. We don't know everything yet. Hopefully that will create an effect where eventually we'll see these ecosystems, this distributed syndication, distributed identity clusters merging.
We're coming up on time, Thanasis. When I think about the future direction of the market in this space, I think we're moving in a portable or reusable identity world. It just makes the most sense. Where do you see your business 5 years, 10 years out? Like, what's your ultimate mission?
Our ultimate mission is, as I said, that we should live in a world where we never have to register, verify, fill another form again, and that we should be certain that our digital twin, that digital ID or digital twin, there is some AI playing there, like AI agents sort of component. Takes care of all the boring aspects of our life, and we can do what we do best. We can create and we can think, and we don't have to worry about these things. But this can have 2 very different endings, right? So there can be an ending where we have a lock-in effect to a big tech platform, and we already see that our clients don't like using sign-up code. And it's something that it was not a shock, but I didn't understand how much people don't like it before I talked to a bunch of them. So there's the dystopian future where we're locked in Siri or Google Assistant, let's call it like that. And it does some of these things for us because it's got integrations and it allows you to navigate, and it does certain things on your behalf. But when you want to leave Siri, it's incredibly tough, and the average person doesn't do it. And that is dystopian, because then the power is so high that abuse is definitely going to come. And it's already come. We've already seen abuse by big tech platforms. Even Apple, who is playing the privacy vindicator role anyway. So there is that future, and there's a future where there should be many ecosystems, and there should be agnostic to geos. Not necessarily, one in Greece, one in UK, one in the US, but maybe it's geo, maybe it's industry specific. I don't know how that will evolve in general. I cannot imagine how that will evolve, but I hope it doesn't evolve to a Google or Apple wallet sort of scenario. And it should definitely, the utopian side of it is a future where that ID, we control it. We have obviously all these good things about consent and data privacy. This is a given by now. I'm not even considering this as the USP, right? Consent and data privacy should be a given. But on top of that, we should be able to say, you know what, I don't like using Skyscanner ID anymore. I'll pack up and go to Trip.com. Or I will take, and this is something we've been talking about a bit with Jacoby in a very theoretical, like philosophical way. Maybe we create a subscription service where you get a Raspberry Pi and it comes packed with all the security you need, and you put it on your plug at your home and it hosts your ID. And then you're actually an independent person on the web and you don't rely on anyone. But that is far from now. Ultimately, though, the key is this. In that future, we should have the choice. In that future, we should have the choice to say, I don't belong to Apple. I don't belong to Google. And I also don't belong to Onfido or Yoti or anyone. I can choose where I want to go because I want to go there. And the moment I choose, it should be ridiculously simple to transfer all my life to the next ID. It should be like literally one tap. You should be able to transfer everything it knows about you, all your information that allows you to be and exist in the digital realm and tap and do the things you do. That is freedom. And that is where we'd like to go. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, it sounds really big when I say it out loud.
Thank you for sharing. It's a bold mission. It's a bold vision. So I wish you much success on the road ahead. Well, Thanasis, before we close out on the podcast, if you've seen any of these episodes, I like to go a little bit beyond the profile and the business stuff. And when I was looking into your background, I see that you played professional basketball. I'd love to hear just a little bit about that and how that might have informed your future professional work life.
There was actually a point in time where I didn't want to study anything. I wanted to play basketball. And I wouldn't be LeBron James for sure. I was quite good though. So my team and we won 2 national championships under 19 in Greece. I was the captain of the team. And then I played as a pro in national division, in first national division in Greece. So there was a point in time where all I could think of was basketball. I'm really competitive in general. And I think that's one of the things that I kept, is competition and discipline, in the way that maybe not discipline necessarily, but the persistence to continue and persevere, maybe. And then the other thing I definitely got from it, and I hadn't realized until recently, but somebody told me about it, and I was shocked at how important it is coachability. I grew up playing sports since I was 11. And when you play sports, there's always someone over your head saying, you shouldn't do that, you should be doing this, you should change how you do things. And you have to listen because it's your coach, right? I don't know, do you ever play sports?
I played a little bit when I was younger, but no, I've not had the vast experience that some people have had in sports leagues, and certainly not professional.
Mm-hmm. So you might have noticed though, right? Like the coach is above everyone. When the coach says something, you have to do what the coach says. And I was also blessed to have some really good coaches. So I think you can have good and bad coaches. So I had some bad coaches, but I had majority of my coaches were very good. And that coachability, that mentality instills in you. I think it's one of the most important things that young professionals can gain, because we have a lot of fire and we have a lot of drive, but we definitely don't know everything. And there is a balance to be met, right? So you have to have the fire, but you have to also have the ability to stop and listen and learn from people who've been there, done that, and have the t-shirt to prove it. You have to let your ego drive you. I think I learned a lot.
That's phenomenal. Well, you go from professional captain of a basketball team to the captain of this startup, Magic. So it's a wonderful connection point. Well, as we get to the very end here, for those that are watching or listening to this episode, what kind of conversations are you looking for from the market? Are you looking for more investment or more potential pilot projects? How should people reach out to you?
So we are not looking for investment right now, although we're going to start probably at some point in the summer, around July. It takes a little bit longer here nowadays. Aside from that, we are definitely looking we have 2 pilots going on around, 2 POCs and 2 more in the contract stage. So we can probably take another couple, and that is one of our goals, like create a few cross-industry POCs with the same similar mandate. So aggregator, and when I say aggregators, it can be Skype, but it can also be Trivago. It can also be UStreets, which is utilities. It can be a lot. There are a lot of different type of aggregator layers, and from what I've seen in the market, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I've been proven wrong, there isn't a solution that serves that syndication experience better. The Skyscanner ID, the one-tap sign up, the no password, no phishing, no usernames. So if anyone is watching, or if you have anyone in mind, we'll be more than glad to talk to them, and worst case scenario, learn from them.
Sounds great. I just thought of a few, like booking.com, kayak.com. There's a whole ecosystem of those companies. So if anyone's listening or watching that knows that space, please reach out to Thanasis. I'll include a link to his LinkedIn profile, to their website. And thank you, sir, very much for taking the time to be on the podcast. I really enjoyed learning more about your personal background and your company background, and I'm really excited to see what you've got coming next this summer.
The pleasure is mine, Steve. Thank you so much for hosting me.